best in class, no doubt at all. Watch me rise.
So Leon, today we're joined by Marie. Marie's an advocate, mediator, keynote speaker, spent decades in a world of law, negotiation, conflict resolution, and I must say I could think of better places to be honest, but I'm sure it's been exciting, as we'll hear about. You specialise in a sort of personal, or have specialised in personal injury, law, medical malpractice, insolvency, commercial disputes. You're also a trained mediator. You also sit within the panel of the Legal Practice Council of SA, which sets standards for legal practitioners down there. Also a judge, I believe. So, and I'm sure that's just a high level skirt across the professional career. I'm sure sitting alongside that, there's a personal story and journey within that as well, and your personal drive and ambitions. And Leon and I were really keen to have a conversation to dig into those, to explore what drives you ultimately, Marie. So maybe to just set the scene really for our listeners, maybe you could just talk a bit about your background, what drives you to where you are today, because what we're keen to pull out is those drivers and share that with the audience that gives you your drive to achieve these and I know many other things we'll talk about today.
Yes, the drive. No, basically, Paul and Leon, when I did the course, they said to me that I don't have to worry about finding my story. They will actually help me find it for me. Because when I started the course, I really didn't know exactly what I could talk about or where I could help people. But I wanted to do the course because it was self-improvement. Now, I have always gone out of my way in improving myself. I have, I'm a little bit of a late bloomer. For instance, I started doing karate when I was 43, and I achieved my third dan when I was 51 years old. I became a sensei. So, I've also danced professionally. Yeah, I did. So I drive. So it took me a long time to get actually going with what I wanted to do. And the reason I think that is because of the whole thing of confidence. Lately, and after the course, I actually found the story. They actually made good. I mean, they did help me find my story. And as I go on in my keynote speaking career, which is actually just only starting, I sort of refine the niche, or I find I make it more the crux of it more. I get to the resilience part was where I started off, but now I'm ending in the confidence section, where I realize that after looking at the definition of confidence, if you look at the definition, it says it's a feeling or a belief that one can have faith or rely on something or someone. Now, I've realized that for a very long time in my life, I couldn't rely, believe, or have faith in anybody or anything. So I decided to actually start with myself, believing in myself. And my whole story began actually only after I did the keynote speaking course, where I actually went back to what made me become what I am eventually today, which is a very, very long journey, fighting all the traumas and all the loss. I've suffered tremendous losses in my life. I've lost my mother at the age of 13, my father threw my adoptedness back in my face. I lost both my brothers. They were twins. It feels like everything and everybody that comes close to me die prematurely, even my animals. So that's why I actually now come to the point where I think confidence to me is the core of being a human being. If you don't have self-confidence, you won't be able to connect to anything else in the world. It's amazing. And I've now...
Yeah, just on that, it's fascinating that you remember coming on the program and we said it would help you find your story. And then you just listed a few things there at the beginning about how super impressed, not just myself and Paul were, but also the other cohort members as well. Of you said you become a black belt later in life, then you're a professional dancer, all these things, and you're an advocate as well as a female in South Africa. I think there were just so many things. The challenge that you had was trying to identify the thing, the one thing that you wanted to focus on. And I think you've hit on it when we talked about resilience, about the setbacks that you've had throughout life from a very young age, and how you've been able to overcome them either as an individual or as part of a team, but then still go on to strive and be better and be better. And I just wonder if you can put your finger on, is that a person that's given you that? Is that something that you've had to learn how to be resilient? Where does that confidence come from with you, do you think?
Confidence, yes. There was a question that you said that, or you wanted me actually to think about in the little preamble you gave me, and it said, what comes first, confidence or action? And I realized that confidence comes before action. You need to have self-confidence in any action you are going to take. Now, I always say to people, to find that is we all have voices in our heads, and we must listen to the voices in our head. And then when we hear the voices in our head, we must trust that we will be called for the right things and the right purposes in life. And we must trust that calling. I think that's why people, famous people or successful people always say when they do something that they love, they say it's their calling. It is because it is exactly that. Is they heard something call and they answered that call. So it is a calling. And I always say to people, trust the voices in your head and trust the fact that you can answer that calling, because you will not be called to do something that is not within your capability. For instance, I always use this example of, I've never been called to be a sumo wrestler, because I will not be able to be a sumo wrestler. I know it's a stupid example, but so I think that's where you start. You must start by listening to those voices and then answering those voices. So showing up for yourself. And I have a whole, but it's not as simple as that. If I may just share a dream that I had, and Leon, I've always, a little bit about this dream, because I dreamt it actually 3 days before I did my keynote speaking course. I dreamt that I was given a real life elephant for my birthday on a string by a very, very good friend of mine, and also she's also my biggest critic. And when I took this elephant from her by the string, this elephant got irritated and it shook its head and it plucked me up in the air and I became a kite. But momentarily I was so frightened, I gave myself a few seconds in the dream, and then I realized, but I was floating. Because I became a kite and I was floating on the wings of the wind, and I had the most beautiful view, and then I woke up. And because this was so profound, I actually went and I did a study of this dream in depth. And I found that elephants represent wisdom, power, and influence, and kites represent freedom, or to rise to an occasion. And what was fascinating is that this elephant, the wisdom, power, and influence was actually gifted to me. It wasn't an elephant standing random in the field. My subconscious actually gave that elephant to me, but it was given to me on a string, not on a rope. So the wisdom, the power, and the influence that was given to me now at this late stage in my life, using all my life's experience to actually help other people, comes with a very, very specific rule that you must stay grounded, and you must be very careful in how you use your wisdom, your power, and your influence. Because that kite, if that string snaps, the kite will dive nose first into the ground. So I found that dream absolutely profound. So I base the help that I give people in how to actually find themselves and their calling by them doing that, showing up for themselves. How do they show up? Because if you answer your calls or the callings, you will be wise. You will have wisdom. And if your power eventually, because when you're wise, you get power. And if your power is fueled by wisdom, you will have the influence. Because you get lots of people with power but with no influence. There are a lot of powerful people outside in the world, but they have no influence. I think it's because their power are not fueled by wisdom. Like, for instance, the Kardashians spring to mind. I mean, they are powerful, powerless people. They have no influence, because your influence needs to be for the great of the world, to better people, and let people grow. And it doesn't matter in what milieu, they can be anywhere. So that's why my keynote speech I can actually bespoke it to any scenario or any group of people, whether they be sportsmen, male, female, because it is the way to show up. How do you show up?
Can I ask, looking at that confidence, and you've used the word late bloomer a few times, but there's obviously a point somewhere where you're less confident than the confidence we see today. And if you track back, and again, people listening that are perhaps struggling with confidence, obviously there's no one fix for that. But for yourself personally, when you reflect maybe on your 20s or your 30s, was there a serious lack of confidence within you, and therefore when you reflect on that, did you feel you didn't reach your potentials during that period of time?
Yes, definitely. For instance, one thing that happened is the fact that I was adopted, and my mother's death when I was 13 years old. I actually sort of closed myself from people. So I was always the outsider in school. And although I have many talents, I did not use those talents at school to the extent that I would, if I had the opportunity to go back, do it now. Because I sort of hid behind walls, for actually mourning my mother and the loss, and living with my father that I didn't actually know, and my stepmother that was really the evil stepmother. I mean, I really felt like but I was no Cinderella, unfortunately. So, I was not confident in myself enough to use my talents, and I wish that I had the support that I could now give, even to children and with that struggles with that, so that they can achieve their best, even in primary school and high school.
Just on that point, I know that for the listeners, I've heard it before. I've heard your keynote speech before, and how you bounced back from the trauma of losing your mother at such a young age, and then finding out, the news from your father that you were adopted. Then, do you think that's where you got your resilience, or do you think that's when you closed the doors and felt like it was you against the world?
Yes, I came to a point in adversity where I almost gave up my studies. But somehow I just stood in front of the mirror one morning, I'll never forget it, and I looked and I asked my future self a question. What would my future self say if I went into varsity today and said to them that I am actually giving up? I'm not going to finish my studies. And thank God I asked myself that question, because I just looked at my future self in the mirror and I realized, wow, I would hate it, even if I didn't become a lawyer, even if just the self-respect that I would, that would be lacking. And how would I explain myself to anybody, and let alone anybody else? How would I actually look myself in the mirror? So luckily, I didn't give up. And then things started to turn. I decided not to be defined by the rejection of my father because I was an adopted person, and he decided that he didn't have any duty towards me because I wasn't his blood, I wasn't his kin. I decided there and then not to let that stand in my way. But it was still difficult because now I was really alone. I killed any hope of a back door or any support. So I really was alone in this fight. But somehow it took me a while, but I made it. I made it by hook or by crook. I actually made it. Found a job, paid for my own studies, finished my LLB eventually, and then just went from one job to another. And yeah. But it's not only in my personal life that I'm sad that I didn't have the confidence. Is also in my personal life, not professional life. I mean, also in my personal life. I think with my relationships with men, for instance, I've always blocked love out. I didn't give myself the opportunity to feel love completely and allow other people to love me because of that. Yeah, and now that I've actually opened myself up, it's almost too late.
Never too late.
But I always say to people, it's also never too late, because I had to reinvent myself recently, which I'm in the process of doing at the age of 61. So I suppose it is never too late.
Just on that, I know that Marty, you're going to jump in. Sorry, just on that, Marie, you're one of the most impressive, and I said this to you when I met you for that first time when you flew over from Johannesburg. One of the most impressive individuals. I nearly said females, but that would be incorrect, because you're one of the most impressive individuals that I've met. In that how driven you are. When you put your mind at something, you are driven to succeed, and you don't let anything get in your way. So that may be a consequence of a difficult or challenging upbringing, and that may have shaped. We all know, right? We're a product of our environment, and that shapes who we are, the relationships we have, the decisions we make or not make, and then we find ourselves at a point in time where sometimes, if we have the luxury of pressing pause and looking back of how we've come on this journey, it sounds like that's what you've done. You've always been achieving, and now more recently you've actually said, hang on a minute, I'm just going to press pause and just take a step back and have a look at the journey that you've come on, and now it gives you that, empowered you, it sounds like, to go and do the things that you're really passionate about doing. Do you reckon that's fair?
That's absolutely true. Absolutely. I've had, because I don't know what I told you, but I actually went and I wrote a book. Which is essentially a self-help book, but it's based on personal experience. It's called The Shortest Road to Peace, because my father always said to me, the shortest road to peace is the truth. So it's about the truth. It's the truth about depression, the truth about procrastination, the truth about loss, the truth about eating disorders, the truth about going out there doing things that is not comfortable, the truth about love, the truth about living alone. So when I wrote that book, it actually just poured, all 55,000 words of it just poured out of me in that moment that I hit pause. And ever since I've finished with the book, it's like I can now even more so objectify all these terrible things that I thought happened to me, which I suppose would be terrible, but if you objectify them and you don't give them power over you, they are actually gifts and not trauma. And the keynote speaking course helped me with that. There was a day that I'll never forget. Pausing. Oh my goodness. I cried so much as when we had to pick up the cards, Leon, remember, and we had to tell our story. And I just couldn't stop crying. And I ran out because it was just too much. This was Lucy Key. The day of Lucy Key and John Joe actually taught us how to tell a story. And I was busy telling the story, and I just started crying so terribly I couldn't stop. And I ran out. And Dean Richards found me outside, and he saw that I was just a nervous wreck. I just couldn't take this anymore. It was like too much for me to face this person that I actually never faced before. And he said to me, "You look like you need a gin and tonic." And I said to him, "Yeah, please, I need a gin and tonic." And Paul was so upset. He said, "You are the first and only person who has ever had a drink before the end of the day." So I said to him, "Well, cheers, Paul. Here I go." Yeah, but I must say, I calmed down after that. But that was sort of the day. It was like a turning point where I could actually take my pain and use it to the benefit of myself, let alone other people, that I could actually manage it. I can actually now switch it on and off.
That I must say, that reframing of, let's call it the reframing of the challenges and trauma is really impressive. I want to go back to something you mentioned there, just as something I've heard before from Matthew McConaughey. Talks around, you mentioned there about looking in the mirror. He was asked a question once about who his hero is, and he said his hero is him in 10 years' time, and in 10 years' time his hero will be who he will be in 10 years. And that very much reminds me of how you describe looking in the mirror there. So and drilling in on that, it's like a career and observations from the outside here, a lot of success, a lot of achievements, that someone listening who's perhaps not in that confident space, who's struggling, who's maybe in their 20s, they do have the voice. You talked about voices in the head, do have voices in the head, and sometimes they're not. I'm sure we've all, I can certainly testify to have not good voices in my head at times. How would you now give advice to somebody of a younger, well, they don't have to be younger, but in that place where that confidence isn't there, and that looking in the mirror can be really difficult? And how do you, is it a bite-sized, step-by-step process? How do people approach that if they're in that position?
Well, I think, first of all, you must meditate. That is something that I also found of profound value for me. It is absolutely amazing because you calm down, you get quiet. You know, it's some Japanese guy, I think, that said, you know, people who live in yesterday are often sad because they miss the good times, or they are heartbroken. People who live in tomorrow are afraid because of they don't know what's coming. But people who live in the now are always happy. Because now, as we are sitting here, we don't have, neither one of us have any problems. It's a wonderful day. We have wonderful friends. We can speak. You can hear. You know, there's so much to be grateful for. So any age, when you get that feeling that you don't know what is going on, you need to get quiet, and then you need to take out a journal. And you know what upsets me about men is men think journaling is a female thing. I don't know why that we must kill that perception. Really, I see you laughing, Leon, but it is, isn't it? They always think so. The journaling that they're talking about in self-help is not a journaling and writing down. Well, it can be for anybody, but it's mostly writing down your thoughts, because I read something the other day that I wrote in 2022, where I wrote I didn't know where I'm going to get the next month's money for my next month's expenses. I don't know where am I going to get it. So I wrote it down in my journal. And 2026, I think to myself, Marie, here you are. He of little faith. So if I didn't have that journal moment, that realization that you can stop worrying, because you are worrying for nothing. So when you hear these voices, you must become quiet. You must sit and you must take out your journal, and you must write down the voices those ones that call you to drugs or alcohol or heroin or whatever it is that I don't know, as they say, your poison, or whether it's being the wrong person, staying with the wrong person, or whatever that might be, those voices that you don't want to hear. You must distinguish them. You must actually write them down, and you must write the ones down that are good ones. And once you've separated the good ones from the bad voices, and you've decided, all right, these are the good voices, you must decide who it is that you want to be. That is very important. Not to become, you must what you want to be. Because if you live in the future, you're just going to postpone that thing to the future. So if you decide now you want to be a doctor, for instance, you like in your 20s, now you want to become a doctor. Be a doctor. Go take action. Get that confidence that you will have the calling. Trust it because you have self-confidence. Take action after your confidence. Go and enroll or to become a doctor. Or if you don't have the money, go out and try and find bursaries or whatever. Or just phone people. Ask. People, I don't also understand why people don't ask. Ask people to help. Even if they say no, just go constantly ask them. Eventually, you'll get a right answer. So my advice to them would be just that. Hit pause. Count to 10. You know, every thought they say that you get it starts with your reptilian brain, then it goes to your limbic brain, and it goes then to your neurocortex. Here is your fight, flight, flee or fawn, okay, is at the back. Then your limbic brain is all the senses that you give a color to whatever you perceive it to be. But it must come to your neurocortex because this is where your rational thought is located. And that's why when you hit the pause button, you can be in the moment and you can understand more what it is that you want. And then you must go out and do it. That is when you need to do the showing up bit.
I think on that reminds me of Chris Sutton, who was on one of our programs previously as well. He came out with a thought which I've used ever since then and probably claimed it as my idea, but it wasn't, it was his. He said, we always tell ourselves, or here we say, well, it doesn't matter, it was the thought that counts. And he says, no, I don't agree with that. He said it's the action that follows the thought that really counts. Because we can always have lots of thoughts, but if you don't do anything about it, if you don't act, like you just said to Marie, if you don't go out and do something about it, then the thought is just a dream. So I always remind myself of that, and I say that to my kids and everybody else, is when I hear the phrase, oh, it's a thought that counts, I'll always go, well, no, is it? It's the action that immediately follows a thought that counts. I think that's what you've just articulated very well then.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It sounds, yeah. What I took away was the controlling the controllables, what can you control moving forward and take action out of those controls. So one of the things I know you talk a bit about, Marie, is procrastination, and I guess again taking action and moving forward, and then there's this procrastination piece as well. How do people navigate that challenge of making those decisions through your experience?
Well, procrastination, there are as many reasons for procrastination as there are people on earth. And I think people misunderstand procrastination for laziness. A lot of people think it's laziness, but it's not. I know that I procrastinate, my reason for procrastination is a fear of failure. Because I am so hard on myself, I fear failure. So then I would rather sit and do nothing. I'll just look at it. I'll think, okay, karate is a very good example. For years and years and years, I wanted to do karate, but I didn't think, that I would be able to be a Bruce Lee. And then I sort of I postponed it the whole time by saying, no, I don't have time, or then I didn't have money. And, I thought out all sorts of rubbish reasons. When just one day, a friend of mine said, come, let's go to karate. Come join me. I don't want to go by myself. Well, she ended at a green belt and I got 3 blacks. So I just because I just gave myself the opportunity to do it and to not to fail.
Yeah.
So you can procrastinate for that reason. You can also procrastinate because of the fact that you don't have confidence. Because that is mine, that I didn't have the confidence. The fear of not succeeding is one, and then not having the confidence is another. So once again, you need to center yourself. And I have lots of ways, and I've obviously been listening to podcasts and read a lot of self-help books over the past 10 years, and I've also become very spiritual myself. So I've got lots of tools to help people to center themselves, to get rid of whatever it is that they cause them to procrastinate. But once again, before you can resolve a problem, you must understand the problem. You must understand why you are procrastinating, because you might not be procrastinating for the same reason I am. Like, being a female in the legal fraternity also can cause procrastination. Not in me, but in a lot of females that I've spoken to in my fraternity say that they didn't go for the jobs that men would normally get because they felt not seen, that they would not be seen in the room. They would not be the obvious choice. If it wasn't a white male, they wouldn't be chosen. And you know what? I get a lot of flack for this. People say to me, but that's not true. It is absolutely true. I lived it. But I just decided that I'm not going to let that define me. I'm going to run in there and sort of like demand it, really. Yeah, I was not always successful, obviously, but at least I tried.
Yeah.
But that is also a form of procrastination, turning away from something because you think that the answer will be no before you've tried. So yeah, I don't know whether that would really be able. I can only help you when you explain your specific procrastination problem to me. It's a very wide field. Yeah.
Yeah, no, understood. And one thing I hear, and obviously it shouts out very loudly, is you touched on self-development there, but how, like, your ability to, I'll use the word look in the mirror and observe your own self is, I think, the start of most people's journey for self-improvement. How, again, a lot of people, again, it's fine not to do it, but it helps to do that to then better understand yourself. What again triggered you, if you look back through time, that looking at oneself as a start point, what made you start on that journey, do you think?
I was beginning to lose self-respect. There was a point, I don't know exactly when. I think it was over a period of a few years, but especially the time when I decided maybe that I should give up studying law because I'm not clever enough. And that moment that I actually stood in front of that mirror, and I had a full-on discussion with myself. I think it was then that it came a turning point. Sorry again, what was the question again?
I suppose it was just understanding that ability to look in the mirror and really often self-critique, which obviously often involves kind of bashing yourself and then continuing to do that, really looking at areas of where you improve, etc. But that journey kind of only has to start in one place, but not everyone does it. And I believe that a journey through self-development starts with oneself and assessing where one is at any one time, and the ability to do that I don't think is as easy as, well, it's not just a flick of a switch, is it? It takes time. And I just wondered, in your journey, what was kind of the thing that made you go, yeah, what do I need to be better at here? What do I need to improve?
Yeah, no, I understand now. Yeah, I remember. It was, it had to do with talent. I think because I'm also very religious. So it was, where God gives the different talents to the different people. he gave one talent, and he gave another person, say, 3 talents, and he gave another person 10 talents. And the one with the 10 talents went and he buried the talents. He didn't do anything with the talents. The one with the 3 sort of, made it to 4 talents. But the one that got 1 talent actually took that talent and multiplied it and made it 10 talents. And in that section of the Bible, God sort of says it's like it's an example. So he actually said, this person is worthy of my accolade. The one that took 1 talent and actually made it 10 talents. And I just looked, whilst I was speaking to myself in that mirror, because I know that I'm not stupid. I know that I'm blessed. Because, I mean, you know what, nobody's an idiot. If you really look at yourself, you'll see. But you've got the physique, you've got the health, you're reasonably brainy. I mean, you've made it thus far on doing really nothing, because at that stage I sort of read through it and go write an exam and pass it anyway. I mean, can you imagine what could happen if I put in a little bit of effort? So all of this came to me, and I realized, but you're an idiot. You're going to hate yourself. So I didn't want to hate myself. I actually wanted to have some self-respect, to be able to face, like Matthew McConaughey said, face myself in 10 years' time and say, well done, you. And I must say, I've had many a moment like that, where I could actually say, been there, done that, what is next?
Yeah, you're definitely right, whether that's karate or ballroom dancing. Can I talk about confidence and conflict resolution? So I guess through your professional career, you'll obviously during law, there's disagreements everywhere, and that you're obviously seeing 2 sides of an argument constantly. And I'm part of then the attributes to make or reduce conflict, which is probably quite ironic in the world we live in at the moment, even on a global scale when we look at conflict. And obviously there's so much dynamics to that. But within that, I suppose, again, with oneself, what's controllable within there so I've got a conflict with someone. What should I be looking at? Because obviously conflict usually involves me attacking Leon attacking me. When I guess conflict resolution, a lot of what you talk about is stop attacking each other. Again, go back to reflect on your emotions, your EQ, your awareness, and use that as a start point for both parties to then bring the conflict resolution together. Is that the process that you kind of look at when you think about conflict resolution?
Yes, definitely. That's again where you need to hit that pause button. I know it's very difficult, especially when somebody's attacking you. To not, you must, as they say, you must listen, not to react, but to respond. Now, the only way that you can do that is by being emotionally intelligent. And you are the only person that can teach yourself emotional intelligence. And that is, once again, that pause button, that belief that you must have, that you can rely on yourself to get yourself out of this situation with the best conclusion. But you need to give yourself the opportunity to think rationally about what is happening. Now, I know this is a utopian idea, but it is achievable. I've been practicing it lately, only now for the last 2 years or so, and it works. It works so well. If you think, let me just step back and listen to this person and see what's going on. Because you know what? I don't know whether you've ever read the 4 agreements, but one of the 4 agreements is never take anything personally. So what I've realized in life, it's almost never about you. Nothing is ever about you. It's when a person comes and they shout at you and say, yes, but you should not, you shouldn't put, well, what can I use? Say, don't fill your plate like that, or don't drink that much, or don't laugh like that, or I don't like that color lipstick, or you look terrible in that dress. they probably say it because there is something within them that they need to get out. Because it's unnecessary. If you think about it, it's unnecessary to ever scream or shout at anybody, ever. If you have control over yourself and your own emotions, I'm not saying no, people are not going to irritate you. Of course they are. Because we are not the same. But there are ways and ways of actually getting across to somebody that, listen, this is not working for me. It's not you don't need to shout.
Have you developed that through your legal profession, your professional career, do you think? Or do you think that's something that you've learned in your personal life? Because, as you said then, in black and white, that makes perfect logical sense. In the heat of the moment, we've all been there. We want to react and respond, whatever the way we're not supposed to do it, right? But have you learned that through your career, or is that something that you've developed outside of the courtroom, do you think?
My career has absolutely helped with that, definitely, because there is self-control is tantamount to or paramount to actually achieving anything. So you need to listen, to not react but respond rather when in a legal profession, most definitely. And you lose respect immediately if you lose. I see it in my colleagues. When they start shouting and screaming at one another, nothing happens. But if you speak your truth quietly and clearly, in the Desiderata it says, speak your truth quietly and clearly and listen to others. Even the dull and ignorant, they too have their story. So if you, so yes, but I must say that we were also taught to be aggressive. But you can be aggressive in an assertive way. You can be aggressive without being arrogant. You must just never be arrogant. I don't know how to actually frame it, but just there's the confidence again. Just you must know your truth, and you must be able to translate it and convey it confidently. And then people will listen to you. Any event, far more than when you start screaming and everything. They say that you can catch far many flies with honey than with what's the saying?
Can I ask a question just of Leon? So we talked there about EQ and IQ. If you look back on your rugby career and being on the pitch with many amazing leaders, etc., would you class those ones who were more effective would have had, forgetting about the ball skills, have probably better IQ, EQ on the pitch because they wouldn't react. They'd be more self-aware of what was going on.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I suppose rugby might be an anomaly because the good leaders, the good captains I've had are the ones that have led from the front, and we see how they respond to a situation, and then we would look to see, is that the correct response, and then we would follow suit, whatever that would be. And I suppose rugby is using Marie's there's a space for aggression in rugby, controlled aggression. But looking at the leaders, the ones who have the good leaders in a very heated moment can press pause, take a step back, and make the right decision. I think that's where you find your great captains, where in the heat of the battle, everything's going at 100 miles per hour, there are fists flying, then you have to make a decision, and that decision needs to be to the betterment of the team. Those who have got their heads stuck down and still involved in the heat and the speed rarely can make a well-measured decision. It's the ones that can take a step back, or even to go one step further, if they feel like they're in that situation where they can't make an accurate call, they delegate to somebody else who's in a better position, in a calmer space, to make that call on their behalf. Now they're the superheroes, right? Who understand, it's not the right time for me now. What do you think? And I think they're the great leaders, certainly I've seen on a sporting perspective. And I wonder if that's the same in the legal world or in the professional world, Marie.
Yes, because conflict often is caused by some or other dignity violation, and when you are the resolutor, you need to find whatever dignity violation is present in the person that you are trying to calm down, or that you are trying to mediate, for instance. Once you have identified the dignity violation, you can actually start addressing it But if you are a properly equipped person with enough EQ, which I think comes with IQ, unfortunately, you will understand your own limitations, and you will understand what somebody said that touched your dignity now, that impaired your dignity before reacting. That's why I say it's important to hit pause, to get to that, to the neurocortex part where you actually can rationally think. It's where perception comes in. Perception is a very people say, change your perception, change your life. But I don't think a lot of people understand exactly what perception is and how you get perception. Your perception can change so quickly, but it can actually rule your life, because it is how you experience the world out there. So before you develop any kind of perception, you must make dead sure that perception is an authentic one. And that all needs pause. So, yes, breathing also. It's so, Leon, that's amazing. The breathing part. I remember that I was the only one out of the four of us that could actually stick my hands in the bucket and my feet and answer the questions about Glenda, who she was. She couldn't at all. I mean, Dean refused. He didn't even want to do that.
You've got legendary status for that, Marie, and I relay that story to every single person that's been on the programme since. That even the great Dean Richards, the great man himself, couldn't do it, and you stepped in after him and just showed him how it was done. So yeah, that's through the power of the breath, the power of the pause,
Absolutely.
The power of the breath, controlling, slowing things down, and being in the moment. Absolutely, yeah.
I tell the story often. I was watching Lady Diana marry Prince Charles in 1981. And I just wondered out loud, how can a girl be a girl one day and a princess the next? And my stepmother said to me, oh no, it's easy. All you need to do is you smile, you count to 3, wave, count to 3, touch your pearls, count to 3, and then breathe. And then you repeat it. So I've seen many people, wave their arms around in frustration. I've seen many people clutch their pearls in frustration. I have seen a lot of people grin in jealousy or hatred or anything. But you know what? I've never seen people breathe. And I think all of these things are distorted because they must just take a deep, deep breath, but that really deep one, from that diaphragm right through to the top of your head, holding it there and then releasing it. I think that is just, I think it's the simplest answer to most problems in life. Just breathe.
I agree. So just to finish off, Marie, if that's okay, you mentioned earlier about, I think you used the word reinvention later in life. I think just listening to you today, meeting you for the first time, I'd probably just call it an evolution. I wouldn't say you need to reinvent, it's just the evolution that you seemingly go through constantly. What is that evolution you talk about, or reinvention?
Well, because mine was really reinvention, and it happened during COVID. And I think a lot of people, COVID is the terrible thing. They're never going to do that to me again. They can lock me up, but I'm not doing that again. I lost the biggest client that I had, and the client also decided not to pay what they owed. So I'm still busy. I'm still in legal battles, trying to get the money that I'm owed. So because I put my eggs in one basket, unfortunately, I had to actually go out and reinvent myself in the sense of being an advocate. And the opportunities were few and far between, and also being my age. So one day I just went and I sat down and I thought, how am I going to actually do this? So I decided, okay, forget your age. Just forget that you are 61. Go and sit down, or 60 at the time. Go and sit down and think, you are 23 years old, you're coming out of varsity right now. What is it that you will do? What are you going to do? And I just actually attacked it that way. I just went about it that way. I decided, oh wow, but I actually have a house now. I actually have tons of experience. I've got loads of friends all over the world, very, very famous ones. I have a car and this health. So forget about all of this and just do it. Just go and do these things. So now I did an extra course in mediation. So I started being a mediator. I widened my advocacy skills. I'm doing far more things now. I'm doing more contracts and opened myself up to even family law, which I didn't want to do previously. So I opened that spectrum for myself, and now the keynote speaking as well. Although I'm not getting any financial traction on it yet, but it is a source of or how can I say, it's networking. It's helped me to network a lot and get to know a lot of people that can open doors for me in the other parts of my life. So to me, it was really reinventing myself, and at such a late age where some people are getting ready to retire, and slow down.
Or the opposite.
Typically me, I'm on all engines running. Yeah.
I think we can hear from the conversation. Obviously, you're very driven, so. Yeah, I'm going with evolution rather than reinvention, but that's fine. So two other things I want to touch on, but I appreciate time, but I think it's reflected in the conversation today. I wanted to talk a bit about, I suppose, vulnerability and authenticity, but you've obviously been very candid to talk about the challenges as a younger, well, not just as a younger person, but particularly the traumatic events, which it shows your vulnerability there, then by default showing your authenticity. So I guess that's something, also people can take away from this conversation, is that that's an important part of life, is showing that vulnerability and authenticity as part of confidence building.
Yes, absolutely. That is the imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. That's how to beat the imposter syndrome, where I realize, and I am absolutely confident that you will not catch me out as a fraud, not at all. What you see is 100% what you get. I mean, I don't even bother working on my accent anymore, because I know, especially English people hate South African accents. So there was a time where I decided, no, maybe I should go for elocution lessons or something. I decided, no, you know what? This is me. This is the way I speak. This is the way I dress. This is the way I walk. This is the way I talk. In that manner, in that sense, I have evolved into absolutely one authentic Marie De Meyer. Well, actually just Marie. I'm not even my surnames. I've had so many surnames. And that's the only I have. I really have. I have an adopted surname. I've got a biological surname, adopted surname, a first married surname, and a second married surname. So I mean, sure, it is a lot for people to take.
You are unapologetically
Sorry?
Marie. You are
I'm
unapologetically Marie.
unapologetically Marie. Quite true. But that's also, this is getting rid of the imposter syndrome and having that confidence to do that, because you are authentic, because you are not trying to be anybody else. And I'm not jealous of anybody else, and I'm not trying to chase anything that anybody else has. Or, when you're younger, you think you wish you were this person, or you wish you were, if I were a rich man. I am a rich woman.
Nice. And to link back, whether these come out in order, but one of the conversations, and we talked earlier, or Leon talked about stealing someone else's saying. We chatted with Stuart Henry a while ago, and he talks about imposter syndrome, and that if you haven't got imposter syndrome, then you are the imposter. So it's important to always have a little bit of that within you, that self-check, I guess, to check the ego's in check. And then the other bit, we also spoke with Annesley Park, and she talks a lot around journaling, and such a young girl, she's late 20s now, and the importance of journaling for her, which is obviously something you touched on at the beginning then. So again, I'm seeing from a theme from chatting with high performers such as yourself, Marie, the importance of these aspects. So So thank you for your time today. It's been amazingly insightful. I think we could probably do 2 hours easily chatting around this, but it's impressive. One question I just have, you talked about self-improvement. It would be really interesting for your listeners if you've got one book you would recommend that people go and read.
One book that I've read.
Yeah, appreciate there's many out there.
In addition to your book,
In
Marie.
addition to yours, yeah.
You know what? I think it's a short pager. If you haven't read any of those books and you're starting out, read the Four Agreements by who's it? Emmanuel. Can't remember who is it by. I've got it here somewhere.
We'll post on
But it's called the Four Agreements. Yeah, it's like 50 pages or something, and it really breaks it down. 4 things that you must agree with yourself before you can start anything else.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us from Pretoria. For those that heard the different bird sounds in the background, that's obviously not from the Isle of Man, certainly. So we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Best in class, no doubt at all. Watch me ride.